Alright, so this is 10.6, identify conic sections. All we're going to do here is identify and transform conic sections. Actually, really just identify. So this one is really not very hard. It's just that you're looking at it from a different perspective. And I think this is helpful for when if you're trying to identify different types of conic sections. Then once you've identified which one you're dealing with, you can go back and realize, look at what part of the notes you need to help you figure out maybe the foci or the directrix or the center or whatever else you may be looking at. Alright, so on page 760 of this section, you can already see there's this is stuff you've already seen. You saw these in 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, 10.5. You saw all those in those sections as you've been working them, hopefully, which somehow, for what I've seen in some of the checking and based on some of the videos or the YouTube report telling me how many people have viewed my videos, I'm going to go with a lot of y'all have been doing the work y'all have, so that you should be doing, but we'll be nice and say that you have. So anyways, so here you go. Of course, obviously, if you see something squared, two terms squared and you're adding, you've got a circle. If you see two terms adding, but you have an A and a B maybe, like two different numbers in front of the x and the y, or they're under them, and it's equal to 1, that would be an ellipse. Minus square two terms and subtract them, that would be a hyperbola. If only one of them squared, it's a parabola. So, very quickly, let's do it like that, and let's go back to here and alright, so let's look at this and try to identify the conic sections each equation represents. Okay, so for our first example, which just disappeared for some reason, I'm having an easy time with this, aren't I? We have this, x minus 7 squared over 25 minus y plus 2 squared over 4 equals 1. Okay, the minus right there is your key. You know you're dealing with a square on both of them, you have a minus. So that would tell you that that should be a hyperbola, and because the x is over the A, that would tell you that it has a horizontal transverse axis. Now, that would key you into looking at those formulas that deal with the horizontal transverse axis. So keep in mind, if you've got those pictures or if you've got those in those notes, now you know even further, more specific area to look into of the notes to help you maybe with a question on the test. Okay, here's another example. Y minus 3 is equal to 1/12 x minus 4 squared. Now, because only one of these is squared, then you know obviously it's a parabola. So then, since it's a parabola, and then based on the thing that it's y and x is the square, this is a vertical parabola with a vertical axis of symmetry. Okay, let's look at another one. X minus 1 squared over 8 squared plus y minus 1 squared over 10 squared. Now realize, of course, these have centers that are not at 0, 0, which is not a big deal. But the point is, again, we're adding. We've got both squared. We have an A an A and a B, or a B and an A. Two different numbers, they're not the same, so that would suggest that this should be an ellipse. And since the A seems to be under the Y, because again with ellipse we're worried about which one, the bigger number, where's the bigger number, that would tell you it's got a vertical major axis. Alright, so now on page 761 you actually have this one. And this is the one that becomes more interesting. And for simple test questions, I can ask, okay, identify what conic section this is. Now, notice there's a couple of things you have to look here. This is one big long formula, or standard form type thing, or we'll say general form. And you're going to have to identify what's A, what's B, what's C, and using those, you will go, okay, I'm doing the b squared minus 4ac formula. That's discriminant. Remember, we did that before with quadratics. And depending on the answer, I could have a circle, an ellipse, hyperbola, and a parabola. Notice the circle and ellipse both have the same less than 0. So there's other conditions that have to be met. For a circle, you have to have b is equal to 0 and a is equal to c, or b is not equal to 0 for an ellipse, or a is not equal to c. So if on an ellipse, if either one of those two is true, that the b is not equal to 0 or a is not equal to c, then you have an ellipse. On a circle, it has to be both conditions met. B has to equal 0 and a has to equal c after you've already discovered that b squared minus 4ac is less than 0. Okay, so we're going to do the exact same thing. We're just going to identify the different type of conic section here and then kind of go from there. Now, if you notice here, the b, again, a is the number in front of the x squared. B is the number in front of an x times y term and should be between x squared and y squared. C is the y squared term. Okay, so according to this, a is equal to 6. There is no x, y term, so b would be equal to 0. And c would be equal to 9. Okay, if you do your b squared minus 4ac, you're going to get 0 squared minus 4 times 6 times 9, which is negative 200 and something, 216. Okay, so since that is less than 0, it's either going to be an ellipse or a circle. Since, okay, b is equal to 0, so that doesn't help us, but a is not equal to c. 6 is not equal to 9. So that means this is an ellipse. Since I met one of the two conditions I needed to make an ellipse. I only have to make one of those two. Look at another example. 4x squared plus 4xy plus y squared minus 12x plus 8y plus some number 36 is equal to 0. Okay, so now you notice here, a is equal to 4. B is the number in front of the xy, that's equal to 4, and c is the number in front of the y squared, which is 1. Okay, do your b squared minus 4ac, 4 squared minus 4 times 1, and you get an answer of 0. Since that is 0, that automatic, you can look, that would be just a parabola. I'm not going to worry about if it's a vertical or horizontal parabola. You're just trying to identify there if it's just a parabola. Alright, so here's our last example for this chapter, or this section, and like I said, this was a very simple section. 9x squared plus 9y squared minus 18x minus 12y minus 50 equals 0. Here the a is 9, there is no xy, so the b is 0, and c is equal to 9. So 0 squared minus 4 times 9 is negative 324. That's less than 0, so again, it can be a circle or an ellipse. Since the b is equal to 0, and that's very important, and a is equal to c, then this is a circle. Okay, so there you go. I think that it's easier to do it this way than try to solve for a variable and to say then be able to graph it, because that's what you would need to be able to do. So there you go. That's it. That's 10.6. Very simple. Just trying to identify conics and then help you with, say, going to the other sections to help you figure out what formulas you may need to do to answer the rest of the questions. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. That's it. Thank you so much.